poppin', y'all? Welcome back to Notion for Pastors. It's me, Jevon, and today is a very, very special day. The reason why it's so special is because I get a chance to share with you guys in this new session called Build With Me. Now, here in Build With Me, you're going to build along with me one of the core functions of my flagship software called Anchor Church OS. And this is really important because I want to really pay homage and highlight someone who you need to know about. This book that I read and I picked up as a church planter, and I was like, yo, this stuff in here is gold. The book is called Streamline. The book Streamline by Michael Lukaszewski is absolutely phenomenal. This book right here kind of revolutionized the way that I kind of thought about pastoral ministry and about healthy church systems. Now, the thing that I really gravitated toward was the master preaching calendar. This is the revised version of the book, but you can pick up this book, but it's in chapter 2 where it's talking about planning your preaching. And Michael was actually the first person that had ever heard of using a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet rather, and building out your preaching calendar. I hadn't even really touched Excel before. I'm not really a big numbers person, but I, was like, okay, well, if it's to plan my preaching, then I'll do it. So I know you can make it in a Google Doc, but also Excel, but he used an Excel spreadsheet. Now I use that, was able to plan out my preaching for a whole year. But one of the things that changed was how I wanted to view and look at my information. And once I encountered something called Notion, I was like, oh, snap. I think that the blueprint that Michael laid out, it would be phenomenal for me to be able to use a Notion database to actually build a master sermon calendar. So I wanted to just pay homage and say thank you so much to Michael. All of your work, your hard work, and just sharing your wealth of knowledge and resources is a huge blessing. So no, you guys, Michael did not pay me or say I'll give you a free book if you talk about me. This is purely on my own. I love this book. I recommend this book hands down. You need to have it. You need to have it regardless if you're a church planter or if you're actually currently pastoring an established church. These things that he talks about in this book, creating healthy church systems, are absolutely phenomenal. And then also speaking to that, Michael also has another organization, a business that really helps support churches. It's called Church Fuel. Again, this is not a paid advertisement, but Church Fuel was one of those resources that I actually used as a church planter when I wanted to learn more about building healthy church systems. I'm talking about things from job descriptions, like templates, and classes on training on how to equip and recruit volunteers, all of those things. So go down to Church Fuel, go connect with them. They're a phenomenal company. They've got some phenomenal organizational management and leadership skills that obviously come from, the heart and the mind of Michael and the rest of the team there. So I would advocate for you guys to do that. I'll put the link in the description if you want to sign up for Church Fuel. Again, go do it. It's a phenomenal resource and you will not be let down, I promise you. And definitely go pick up the book Streamline. I'll make sure I put the link in the description as well, but go get that book. So as you see here on Anchor Church OS, one of the things that I love is the sermon calendar. Now, I'm going to walk with you from start to finish on how to build one using Notion. Now, if you're like, hey fam, Jevon, I appreciate you for doing this, but I don't have time to actually build with you. That's cool. So again, there will be in the link to the description here in this video, there will be a link for a free template. You will have to open up, set up an account on Notion. It's free, and you can download and duplicate this template into your Notion workspace. I'm a Notion affiliate, and so if you do end up signing up for an actual plan, then I get a discount off of my my monthly charge. So there's no money transaction involved, but I get the homie hookup, so to speak, from Notion as an affiliate. So, but again, it doesn't cost you anything. It's going to be a free template, so you can download it and just duplicate it to your Notion workspace, or you can build it. A guy named William Nutt, who has a Notion VIP and a lot of training, he said when you're using Notion, you're going to have to make a decision. Do you want to be a builder or a consumer? I decided to be a builder and partly a consumer. So I'm going to build this for you, and you are going to build with me. Okay. So going into the Master Preaching Calendar, this is what the Master Preaching Calendar actually looks like. So here in the Master Preaching Calendar, you'll be able to see what sermon you're looking at, what date you preached it or you're going to preach it, the name of the speaker, your manuscript, the book of the Bible, and your sermon series that you're currently in, or you will be in when you are looking at this calendar. The thing that I think is very, very important for you to understand is that Notion gives you contextual views of information. So what I'm going to do for you, and what we're going to do together and here in this Build With Me session, is that I'm going to build a Notion database that will allow you to pull in your sermon series, your date of the sermon, the speaker, the book of the Bible, because you may not be the person who's preaching, but you want to know who is preaching in that sermon, and you want to be able to give it a quick look. And this is my favorite look, and that's why I call this the quick look view. So it's the quick look view here is a lot easier to see just right off the jump. When you just look at it, you can see what's happening. So that's what we're going to do. So to do that, we're going to go and start a brand new page. And now we're going to extend that full screen. And then we're going to say that this is called Build With Me. And then we're going to name it Church Fuel. Yeah, because we all need to get church fueled, baby. Church fire. Yeah, let's do church fire. I'm just joking. We're not going to do that. Build With Me, Church Fuel. All right. So here with Build Me Church Fuel, what we're going to do is we're actually going to create our databases. Databases are very, very important for you to create, but we're also going to create them all on one page, and then we are going to link them all together, meaning we're going to create separate databases that we will link together. So we're going to click here on empty page, and then the database that I'd like to use on this one is I'd actually like to use a page. And the reason why we want to do a page is because I'm just right here, databases. Now here on the databases, what I'd like to do is create an inline. So the way you're going to create an inline database is to hit that slash, and then you're going to hit INL, which is inline database. And for this one, we're going to do books of the Bible. Going to scroll down here, just put this full width first. Then we're going to go here again. We're going to do another inline database. And we're going to name this one Manuscripts. Going to do the same thing here. INL, inline. We're going to use this one called Sermon Series. Again here. We're going to do this one. We're going to name it a preaching roster. And for the last one, we're going to do what I would call an index assistant. And you'll see why. All right, so now here I have all my databases created. Now I know it looks like a lot, and so you're like, how are you actually going to do a calendar from this? Watch me whip, and let's work together. All right, so books of the Bible. Now there are 66 books of the Bible. So what I would recommend, unless there are certain things in Notion that you're going to have to do out individually, as in like step 1, step 2, step 3. So meaning you'd have to put in every single book of the Bible, which is fine. I do not want to do that right now because I don't have the time to write out every single individual book of the Bible, because there's actually an easier way in Notion. You can actually use Notion's AI feature. So here, what I'm going to do in Notion's AI feature, I'm going to hit spacebar to bring up the Notion Command Center for AI. And then I'm going to ask Notion AI to please, I always like to say please, even though I don't want to, you know. I mean, even I don't have to. I love saying please, but you're asking AI, so you don't really need to say please. But right here, I already have entered in this prompt before. Please list all 66 books of the Bible. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click this and hit go. So now it's listing all 66 books of the Bible. So I didn't actually have to write that out. So that's awesome. So here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to copy all of this. Go down to the top. I'm going to copy all this. Then I'm going to go back to the top. And I'm going to drag this whole list into here. So boom, just like that, 66 books of the Bible is right there. Isn't that crazy? So there we go. We got our books of the Bible database. So now with our books of the Bible database, what we want to do is we want to create a tag. A tag allows you to filter and drill down information. So a tag, for example, for what we would need here is to create a tag is we'll go in this box, we'll click here, and we're going to say OT. Can you guess what OT is? Old Testament. So we also wanted to do another tag called NT, which is not NT Wright, but he's dope and amazing. New Testament. So what we're going to do then is know, okay, what's Old Testament books? So we'll go ahead and take this little arrow and we'll drag it down all the way until we get to the last book of the Old Testament before the New Testament, Malachi. And then right here, we'll load more so that now we can click in here, click New Testament. Gonna drag it all the way down, not that far down. And then there we go, New Testament. So now all of a sudden we have a database that is now books of the Bible. It has not only the books of the Bible, but also whether it's the New Testament or Old Testament. Now, what I also like to do, which is a way helpful for me to think through, again, understand that I'm not trying to create Logos Bible software. I'm not trying to do that. That's way too powerful. I don't want the smoke, okay? So what I want to do is the closest thing that would be helpful, but it's actually simple and powerful at the same time. So what I also would like to do is I would also like to come in here, and then I want to create a new property, and then we're going to click this right here, and I'm going to call it genre. So we all know that the Bible has different types of genre, right? So I want to say, okay, for this particular one, I'm going to put here Torah, the law of Moses. The next one, Nevi'im, prophets. And as I get Nevi'im, the prophets, I'm going to go next to Ketuvim, which is the writings. And then next, we have Esora, which is the good news. All right. Then we have the Messianic writings. The letters. You gotta spell it first. All right, so here we go. I'll just write biblical. Now, the reason why I choose those, like Ketuvim, I love making sure that we are acknowledging where these things come from. Obviously, our Jewish brothers and sisters, especially those who hold to Yeshua or Jesus as the Messiah. So for me, I like to blend in those things, because one of the things that I have added into the whole Anchor Church OS suite is actually the Jewish holidays. So the feasts and the high holy days. So you are actually able to connect the understanding of your particular sermon or your biblical text with the reflection of the Jewish calendar. So that's the reason why I use these Jewish-centric types of biblical genre, even though we know them as, the pastoral or the Pauline epistles or pastoral epistles and each thing. But you see the gist of what I'm going for. So still biblical, but just from a different angle. So with Genesis, obviously we know what categorization it is with Genesis. We know that the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the Torah. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say the law of Moses. So we can get that, and then we'll just drag it down. So there you go. Now with Joshua, so from Joshua all the way down to the Malachi, we'll do it as the prophets. So we'll go Nephim. So Joshua all the way down to all the way down. Okay. Now we have in the New Testament, so from Matthew all the way to Acts, we have the good news. And then we'll just drag this down. And then from Romans down, the Messianic writings. And as we have now created, after putting in all of those and dragging them down, classifying them through their Old Testament tag, the biblical genre tag, and now that database is done. So next we're going to go to manuscripts. And so for manuscripts, this is where you, right here, manuscript name. And now what we want to do is let that be manuscript name right now. Oh, I misspelled it. Okay. So we got manuscript name. Well, just right here, just in case. Manuscript name. And now we have sermon series name. Sermon series name. Preaching roster. Speaker name. We'll name this one Index Assistant. Okay, now, so after we've done this, now in manuscript's name, we've already got this down here for the manuscript. And now what we're going to actually end up doing is we're going to start linking these together. Okay. So what we want to do to link them is, for example, preaching roster. A good tag actually before we start to link things would actually be, let's click a phone number property. So we're going to edit that property, and we're actually going to go to a phone. Then we're also going to add an email property. And then I like to add this one. We just do text, and we're going to add this as a bio. All right, and why not a headshot too? Actually, we need for the headshot, we're actually going to need a files in media. And you might be thinking, okay, what does that have anything to do? The reason why with the preaching roster, what I would do is adding, a phone number, an email, a bio, and a headshot is because let's just say hypothetically, this person or whoever is going to come preach at your church, and you want to make sure that you have their phone number, their email address, a bio, and their headshot if you're trying to share it out to all the social media channels, or if you are the one who's preaching and someone asks you as the preacher for your bio and your headshot. So right here, you'll have them already on hand, and you can just go grab this and give it to them. Okay, so with the manuscript name, what relations that we want to do is we want to give this a actual relation, and a relation actually does it relates one property or a database together. So we're going to go to this relation, and it's asking you, what would you like to relate this to? So in manuscript, I would like it to relate to the index assistant. So then I'll know, again, where it goes. So here, the index assistant, it'll tell me, again, we're going to label these, but it's going to actually be able to link to tell me which actual sermon is it, which sermon is it, not just classifying it from the name of the sermon. So then after there's the manuscript, what I also would like to do is create a relation to the preaching roster. What I'd also like to do is create a relation to the sermon series. And I'd also like to create a relation to relate it to the books of the Bible. Okay, now, the reason why this is very important is, let's just say hypothetically we have a sermon, right? Let's just say, let's put in a sermon here. We have the index, and the way that we'll do the index is, I'll show you in a second. But this right here, see, it just says untitled. Here it is. All right, so let's just say that for this index assistant, this is probably one of the most time consuming things, is we just want to do S-01, right? So it's just sermon 1. So then when I go back up to the top, this is changed to sermon 1. So so that means if right here on my manuscript, it's attached to sermon 1, meaning there are 53, 52 weeks in the calendar year. So you're able to see which sermon it was attached to the sermon title, attached to the sermon. Was it the first sermon or was it the last sermon, in the sense of dates, or did it come in Q1, Q3, Q2? I even like to drill it down even more to Q2, Q3. So what I would even do right here is create another I would create another property, and I'd call it quarter. And then I'd add Q1, Q2, Q3, and then Q4. So I know the quarter of when that was preached. Okay? And I'll do this, and I would do the same thing, and I'd relate it here so you know when that person actually did that. So when I say did that, I mean when they actually preached it and what sermon series is attached to. Is it a fall sermon series? Is it a winter sermon series? Is it a summer sermon series? So you're able to link it and connect it. So when we do link it to the big overall view, we'll be able to see it contextually. Okay, so now after I've done that with manuscript name, I want manuscript to be connected to my sermon series name. And with the sermon series, I'd like it to be just that right here with sermon series. Oh, one of the things I do like to tag it with is like the actual book. So with the relation, I'm going to select books. Oops. Relation. And then I'm going to go to books. Add a relation. So now I have books of the Bible added as a relation for my sermon series. And then I'm also going to add one more relation. And what I'm going to relate this sermon series to is my index assistant. Because then I'll be able to say, with this sermon series, here's what days those were preached in. Okay, shaping up really well. So here's the preaching roster. Again, for this one, this is one of the most time-consuming ones, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to add one more property here. I'm going to add a date property. So this is one of the hardest ones, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know another way to do this easier. So if you guys are Notion gurus and you know what you're doing, hit me up, let me know. But this is one of the hardest things that I've had to do in just making this calendar. So this is the hard part. So I want, again, this to be from 1 all the way down to, 53, 52, there's 52, 53 weeks in the whole calendar year. So I want the S-01 to actually be a day or one sermon. So that means essentially in a year, you have 52 sermons. So that's why I'm drilling it down and giving it an S, and S stands for sermon, and then 1 stands for sermon 1. The other part that's difficult in this is to make sure that you're building this whole calendar out for the whole year. You're going to have to put in the individual dates in this, and you're not able to just really drag it down. So you actually have to go and look at a calendar to see, okay, which Sunday is on which date, and it can become very time consuming and challenging. So this part of the video right here is the part of the video that I'm actually going to do and speed it up. Okay, see you in a second. All right, guys, so I'm all done hitting up those dates, again, from January 2024 all the way down to the end of the year. And then the same thing with the Sermon Index Assistant. Again, now, our Sermon Index Assistant is actually going to be our primary place where we're going to use that view in particular to have all of the other databases that we've already created now be seen. So what I'm going to do is grab the Index Assistant database. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to drag it up to the top. I'm going to put that here just because I want to see that first in primary. I'm going to now, I can click right here and then I can copy the link, which I'd recommend you do. You go back to the Build With Me page. Okay, now remember, everything that we've just done is all in this page right here, the database page. So now what I'd like to do is I will put this here and hit paste or command for a Mac, it's Command V. I believe so. It's Command V. Yeah, Command V. And then what you want to do is create a linked view of the database, meaning you are just going to be able to see what you have just done here in this section. So I hit create linked view of database. Let's make it full screen. So now right here, this is where it gets really, really fun. Now, this is obviously your kind of like normal look of your Excel spreadsheet or your Google Sheet if you're actually using this to plan out your sermon series. So here's what we're going to do. Now, we're going to go back to the database page. And for manuscripts, let's just say that this one is called, I love actually, I have a sermon series called In the Beginning, and it's in the book of Genesis. In the beginning, we'll name this manuscript name In the Beginning, but we'll call it a different sermon series name. Okay, so we'll do In the. Actually, I'd rather go with a new sermon series or a new sermon name called At the Jump. So At the Jump. All right, now At the Jump, the sermon series is actually called. Let's do The Blueprint. Yeah. Okay, so the sermon series name is called The Blueprint. So right here, we're going to see At the Jump. It's sermon number 1. And we're going to say that's it's just the sermon number 1. And then the manuscript name, let's connect to, again, the sermon series was At the Jump. Or the sermon series is The Blueprint. Apologize. The Blueprint. So that's the manuscript name. The sermon series is it's called the Blueprint, and it's from that sermon right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this over here. We're going to delete this because we're currently not using that. And then again, book of the Bible. What book of the Bible is it? It's Genesis. And which sermon is it? It's sermon 1. And then we are going to go to right here. You see that? Look at that. Right there. It says on January 7th, the first sermon, manuscript name is At the Jump. It's in the sermon series called The Blueprint. Okay, now that's great. But what we also want to do is connect it to other database called. So we're going to relate it to the preaching roster. All right. So now this is called speaker. So what we're going to do is we are going to go down to our preaching roster database. And let's, for this one, say this is Michael Lukaszewski. Lukaszewski. All right. And then Lukaszewski. Okay, awesome. And then let's just say Jevon, Washington. So let's just imagine that me and the homie Michael are tag team preaching. Okay. So just put these random numbers in here. 555, 555, 5555. There you go. Phone number. My email address right here is called, let's just say it's called Streamline at church.com. And let's just say mine is, we'll do M Streamline. So let's do Michael. That's the wrong one. Oh, see, now it wants to it wants to email Michael. See, that is also the power of Notion. You could just email the person right from there. So we don't want to do that. It keeps sweet Lord. Okay, so here we go. Now here's where we're trying to go. Let's do M for Michael, okay? And then if we go down here, we'll do the same thing. But for me, we'll just go down over here And we'll do J for Jevon. All right. And then we'll do 555, 555, 555, 6. All right. So there we go. So we got the preaching roster there. We've got the phone numbers. We've got the emails. That was super fun to do those emails. So again, we have Michael. So we have streamline.church.com. All right. And we have jstreamline@church.com. All right. So the reason why that's important is because now when we go up to here, we can have the speaker. So let's just say if we're going to sit down and plan out our whole sermon series, then we need to know how many speakers are going to be speaking. So if we know that we're going to be in the book of Genesis, we'll do is we'll hit this relation to now the book of the Bible. Okay? And we know that we are going to be preaching through the book of Genesis. And we know that this first sermon, Michael is going to preach this first sermon. So now right here, we have on January 7th, 2024. Look right here. You see the first date is January 7th in 2024. So Michael is going to be preaching in sermon number 1. He's going to be preaching, his manuscript is called At the Jump, sermon series called The Blueprint, and it's in the book of the Bible in Genesis. Now, here's where it gets real fun, is when you actually add more sermon series. So let's just say that sermon series called The Blueprint. You don't always have to have the manuscript name right there. I just like to have it there. You can just drag that over, but I prefer like the book of the Bible to be there. Now what we'll do is we'll say, okay, what's another sermon series? Let's do joy. Let's just say for the book of Philippians, right? So we're going to connect the book of Philippians to this one. Now it's not attached to a sermon because we don't know where it's going to be yet. So we'll just leave it at this. So we'll just have books of the Bible, but the sermon series, because then what we'll do is, again, one of the things that I love about the book Streamline is it says, okay, you have X amount of weeks, so you can preach, 4 weeks here or 4 weeks there of that. So this is where it gets good. So let's just say we do want to be in the book of Genesis for these 4 weeks. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say, okay, for the first 4 weeks, we're going to be in Genesis, and I'm just going to drag this all the way down. So in the month of January, Michael's going to preach that sermon. He's going to preach on the 14th, and then I am going to preach on the 21st, and then we'll make Michael do it because he's awesome, and we'll make him preach. So we'll drag this over, and then the sermon series right here. So I like to look at it sometimes, just the sermon series of what we're in, January 7th. There we go. So Michael's the speaker, and that's what it looks like. So we'll go back to our Build With Me page. We will drag this over, and then what we're going to do now is we're going to create my favorite view. It's called the gallery view. So the gallery view is here. So we're going to go click those 3 little dots. We're going to go to layout. And now we have a gallery view. So now, my friends, what you're looking at is this whole piece from sermon 1 all the way down to sermon, you got to load more, to 52. Okay. So all the way down to sermon 52. Now, this is your index assistant. We're just going to hide this to make it look a little bit pretty. But now I want to say, what information do I want to see? What information do I want to see? So what I want to see, a quick look is, I'm going to click these 3 dots. I'm going to go down to properties. I would like to show in the index assistant the date of that sermon. So boom, all of a sudden you're now seeing the date of every single sermon pop up. I want to know what sermon series it is. Boom, sermon series right here, the blueprint. Do I want to see what manuscript name it is? Probably, because it would be good to see the manuscript that's attached to that one, because you may have other speakers or preachers who are actually working on that sermon, and they may get done with theirs faster, and you can just upload this so your content teams can already have it. So yeah, I want to know my manuscript name, and then I'd also like to know who the speaker is. So here we go. I have every single piece right here. Every single piece of information that I want to look at. So on the sermon 1 on January 7th, we're going through the sermon series called the Blueprint. The manuscript name is at the jump. And if we want to add one more thing in here to see what it's shown, books of the Bible, we know that it's through Genesis. So again, right off the jump, you have all the information right here. Now, this is absolutely awesome and powerful. Now, if you want to start to add, different designs to make it look more aesthetically pleasing, that's totally fine. So what we'll do is we're just going to change this background position of a photo. So I'm liking, let's see, this one, cathedral. Awesome. Why not? So I'm going to pick this background. And then since this is a church feel one, we're going to go with an emoji, and we're going to go with fire. Yeah. Because there we go. Build with me. Church fuel. And I'm also weird, so I need to have this looking more centered. So I'm going to do that and save the position. And then here, I'm going to go in here, and just for my sake, I'd like to add change a cover. I'd like to upload one. And then I would just like to say maybe choose that earth photo. Because then what you can do is you can actually go to these 3 dots. You can hit your layout is a gallery layout, a card size. Let's just say I'd like this to be a large card size so I can see all of it, big picture. And let's just say I want to choose the card preview. So a card is what you see right here. So this is the card. The card preview, I would like for not to be page content, but page cover, because that's the photo that I just added. And when I did this, I put made a photo of S-001 or S-002, just indicating that sermon right there. So I made individual ones for all of those. I can teach you guys how to do that. If you'd also like, just go ahead and leave a comment in the description. So now we essentially have a photo on there, and I'm able to view that. Now, this is how you'll be able to just make it a little bit more personal, allow it to, have some kind of cohesion. You can either put a cover image on the type of sermon it is, or let's just say hypothetically you have the sermon series artwork. You can just put that sermon series artwork here as the cover. So again, this is how you can build a sermon calendar, like using the same methodology that Michael brought forth in the book Streamline. And this is one of the most powerful ways that I would say that you can actually plan your preaching and plan, your whole year throughout the sermon. Because one of the other ways that I would like to also look at this information is to click this. I'm going to click a brand new view. In the brand new view that I would like to do is just say Index Assistant View. Now, if we go into the Index Assistant view, remember, it's going to give us this view, which is the same view that we have on the gallery. But I just want to rename this by list. Okay, so now as this is a by list, this particular view, I want to take this and move it over here. And we'll say that the we'll put it back here. So now what we can start to do, guys, is you can sit down with your team all of a sudden and you're going to plan out your calendar, right? So if they have 5-7 different people on your preaching team. Now you can say, okay, on February 4th, we're going to be in the Blueprint and we're going to be in the book of Genesis. Who do we want to preach that one? We just click right here and attach the names. So you'll just start going down and attaching names. All right, who got February 11th? Okay, Jevon does. There you go. And so now what you're starting to do is you're just starting to fill everything in to where by the end of the year, you have everything already done. Because if you know what what quarters and everything you want to do. You can add the information that you need to see it contextually as you're looking at it. So for me, I like to have this view to say, if I just want to do it quick and start to add people in, okay, who's doing what sermon series, the speaker. And again, if you don't like the way that this looks from left to right, you can take it and you can drag it like that. You can just drag it over. So if I just want to do this and start attaching it to it, and then let's just say we're still going to be in the book of Genesis, we can just drag this down. Let's just say we're going to do 10 weeks in the book of Genesis, right? So you would just take that, drag it down. And then the sermon series is called the blueprint, right? It doesn't change. So we can just take that and drag it down. And let's just say, okay, we want Jevon to start preaching more. Okay. Thanks, Mike, for letting me preach more. Again, just keep clicking. Boom. Now look at this. Right now you have a total of 10 weeks of sermons already done, just like that. That's how easy this is. Because the power of Notion, you have all those databases, and because we relate them to one another, now you're able to see this view. So if you were to go back to the gallery view, now look at this all the way through. So we even just know who's preaching on the 28th. We're preaching a sermon series called The Blueprint, and Michael's preaching, and he's preaching in the book of Genesis. And, again, this is the master preaching calendar. If you want to, you can even add, your sermon, your church calendar in there. So like, is there anything that needs to be special that you need to also relate to that sermon that preacher or speaker needs to be able to communicate? So just for the sake of optics of how I am, I just want to create another cover. So let's do this. Just want to make sure that I'm looking at this well. So again, if you just look at it here, so sermon 1, sermon 2, sermon 3, sermon 4, we're already planned our whole first 10 sermons of the week. Of the year. So that's the power of this, guys. This is the power of, if you build out and spend those times building out those relational databases and then link them together, then this is the power that you get to do. And you can plan your whole sermon calendar year all the way through this. And here's where it gets also cool. The last thing that I will show you. So we have this by the gallery view. I'll rename this quick look or quick view. And again, if you don't want to do all of this, the link will be in the description for you guys. Okay, so I'm going to call this quick view. I'm going to call this by list. And then I'm going to call this one by preacher. So preaching roster. So, they call them speakers now. But I'm from the black church, so we gonna call them preachers. Hallelujah, Lord. All right, so preachers. So now let's say, okay, we have our preaching roster. So now with our preaching roster, there's Michael here and there's me here. The information that I want to look at right here, this preaching roster, I don't really need the phone number. I don't really need the email right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter out. I'm going to filter out these properties. I don't want to see the phone number. I also don't want to see the email address. And then I don't want to see the bio. I don't want to see the headshots. And I actually don't want to see, I want to see the manuscript name. So now as I have this just shows me, if I'm Michael, all of a sudden, here's all the sermons that have my name attached to it. This is me. So this is the power. You can continue to drill down and give contextual information. So now let's just say hypothetically, Michael wants to log on here on this template and say, when's the next time that I'm preaching? He can go on here and say, oh, snap, I have all these sermons attached to me. So this is how he can essentially look at it. So with that being said, he can then also relate. We can also relate this one to, we got manuscript name, we got preaching roster. No, actually, that's good. That's good. So right now for Michael, he now knows here's his preaching roster. But here's where it gets cool is you can actually change the view of it. So we're going to change the layout and we're going to make it into a board view. And then for the board view, what we're going to allow is we are going to allow the board view to see this content. Go back here, property shown. We're going to allow for him to say, okay, we're going to have the preaching index assistant. And then what would be good is if we had a relational database. So let's actually create a relation with this database. I'm going to do by list. I'm going to add a relation. A relation, and I want to do it by index assistant. And what I want to see, oops. Okay, sorry guys. Go back here. All right, then we want to actually add in bio, speaker name. We want to actually, let's just have his email in there. And then let's also have manuscript name in there. So now with when you go and look at just by preacher, you can go and look at this whole view just by preacher. So this is where it gets really powerful, is when you have like 7 different preachers and all these preachers know when they're actually preaching. So that's the power of Notion and how it can pull together all of the contextual information. And so now what we're able to actually do is to see in a big picture where our year is and what we're going to be doing. And you can even click and select another one to where you can say, hey, I want to select it by index roster. And the only thing that I want to see is, it's not the quick view that I'm going to be looking at. It is a different view. Let's go to a table view. And let's say you want to remove all of these now properties. I want to remove sermon series, manuscript, book, and now I have this, and create a layout that is actually a board view. And we're going to allow and show one of those properties being a date. So now what we've done is created a view to where you can say by date. So let's now say, now you have a way to look at this now by date. So again, Michael or myself can go on here and say, okay, I have a sermon coming up on February 11th. And if I want to know again what I'm preaching, I just go back to properties of what's shown and say, I'm preaching in this sermon series. And I'm also, here's my manuscript name. Again, it's just a different way, a different view for you to look at the information. Again, contextual. And where you can also do it again is you can drill down even more by just by preacher. So that was the same type of view that you can just go and look at it by preacher. And you can filter out. What you're allowed to do is filter out by speaker name. So when the name contains Michael, there we go. Starts with it. I just put M because it's there. It's only going to show his. So I can change that from just preacher to Michael. So now, again, right here we have quick view. We can look at this sermon calendar by just a quick look view. I've already, again, got my 10 ones already down there. I can go look at it by list. So this is, again, for quick plugins. If I want to go look at it by preacher, it's both me and Michael on there. If I want to look at it by date, it's just by date. Here's when Jevon's going to do this date, this date, this date. And because right here, there's no name, and this is where another benefit of this, where there's no name actually attached to the speaker, this means that these are all the sermons that we need to get filled. So all those dates is when we need to get them filled. Or if I just want to look at it by Michael, if I'm Michael, hey, how many sermons do I have to preach? I click on mine and then boom, right there. All my sermons right here, these are the ones that I'm responsible for. So guys, this is the power of Notion. This is how you build a church-wide calendar. This is how you are able to plan your sermon calendar all the way throughout the year. Again, quick hits, and then have that complete picture and everything be guided all the way through. I hope you guys enjoyed this time. Again, hit that smash button and subscribe. Thank you for taking this time to build with me. And shout out to you, Michael, and the rest of the Church Fuel team. And thank you so much for writing this beautiful, amazing resource called Streamline. Again, if you guys don't have it, go pick it up. I'll put the link in the description. Thank you, everybody, for being here at Notion for Pastors. Grace and peace.